Hi guys, I want to talk to you guys today a little bit about the women's movement, in particular the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, the women's movement will gain strength in the 1960s, the late 1960s, after the successes of the civil rights movement. And so women will once again feel that they have an opportunity to advance their status within society. And there's some important things that happen in the 1960s that do this. If you'll remember, as part of the civil rights movement, we see the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and also the Equal Pay Act of 1963. And these two laws that were passed by Congress prohibited discrimination in employment and compensation on the basis of gender, and race. The problem was that these were very poorly enforced, but it did give women a voice. And so there is another way that they could go about getting change accomplished, and that was through the creation of an amendment. And so Congress will begin the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, in the Equal Rights Amendment, there are three parts to this particular document. The first here is the equality of rights under the law that shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of sex. Women really felt at this point in time that they were required to stay at home, they were required to raise the families, be wives, and that their opportunities outside of the house were limited. And when they were outside of the home, they were usually paid significantly less than men. And so this first section is to address the idea that women should have equal rights within American society and be treated the same as men. The second part is that Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. And so what would happen is Congress, or this section, gives Congress the ability to create a law or pass a law that would help enforce the first part of this amendment, or enforce the Equal Rights Amendment. And lastly, it said in Section 3 that this amendment will take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. So the next thing we want to talk about here is then what exactly does it take to amend the Constitution? The Constitution has only been amended 27 times. The first 10 times were the Bill of Rights. So since the founding of the country, there really has only been 17 times that the Constitution has been amended. And this would have been one of those times, but it doesn't ultimately get ratified. So what exactly does it take to amend the Constitution? The first step is that Congress, in most cases, is going to have to propose an amendment, and then it has to be approved by 2/3 of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Then it goes to the states, and the states have to agree with this particular amendment, 3/4 of the states, which accounts for about 38 of the states. And they must then, once they ratify it, if 38 states ratify it, then the amendment is approved. Now, sometimes amendments are actually have a stipulation as to how long they can exist or attempt to be ratified before they are dead, basically. So when does the Equal Rights Amendment begin? Well, in the early 70s, the House of Representatives will pass the ERA in 1970, and the Senate will do so in 1972. So 1972, it's going to go to the states, and it gets rapid approval. I think it's something like by 1973, it's got 30 of the required 38 states. And by the time that the amendment dies, there will be 35 out of the 38 required states. So we really have to ask ourselves then, why exactly did the Equal Rights Amendment get killed? The expiration on this particular amendment was 10 years. So 1982 was the last year that it could be ratified, and it didn't meet that particular requirement. So the Equal Rights Amendment doesn't exist. So we're going to talk about the two opposing forces here in the debate over the Equal Rights Amendment. The first organization that we're going to talk about is on the left-hand side, and that was something that was known as NOW, or the National Organization of Women. It was founded in 1966 by the lady in the lower left-hand corner by the name of Betty Friedan, and she was the author of a book called The Feminine Mystique. And The Feminine Mystique was, I believe, written in 1963 and will inspire women to realize that they can do much more than just be housewives, to be child care givers, rearers of children, that they have opportunities and they can do more outside of the home. And Betty Friedan in this particular book will encourage women to expand their roles outside of the house in the professional world, and also still to maintain those roles of housewife and mother. So the main goal of the NOW organization that she founded in 1966 was full participation of women in mainstream American society, so equality with men. Today we would say that this would be what was called the glass ceiling, that there was a certain height that women could achieve in the business world before they hit this barrier. And that would include rising in businesses. It would also, as far as management, and it was also, again, as I said earlier, pay rates significantly lower than women. One of the things that NOW did is they had protests. They went to a beauty pageant, the Miss America pageant, I believe it was, and they constructed and they created what they called freedom trash cans. And these freedom trash cans where women could throw away what they referred to as their instruments of oppression, things that women were expected to do in order to be women. So what were some of the things that they would throw into the freedom trash cans? It would be things like fake eyelashes, hair curlers, bras, girdles, high heels. Those were the things, like I said, that they called instruments of oppression. This is where the idea, you've probably heard about women burning their bras. This is what they would do in these freedom trash cans. They light the bras on fire and throw them in there. Now, while the ERA, I should say NOW, had some great effects of giving women more roles within society and bringing more attention and focusing attention on equality for women, it did have some negative effects on society. And that was that oftentimes women would choose to delay getting married, which also meant that the birth rate began to decrease. And as women became more independent, became wage earners, we also see that there is a significant increase in the divorce rates. And there was a group of people that were opposed to what they saw as this destruction of traditional society, and that was that formulated itself into an organization that became known as Stop ERA. It was founded in approximately 1972 or 1973, at the same time that the Equal Rights Amendment came into existence. So they saw the Equal Rights Amendment as something that was destructive. It was created or founded by a lady by the name of Phyllis Schlafly, and you can see her down there in the right-hand corner. She will ultimately remain a proponent of conservative values and the traditional American family well into the 90s. And so the Stop ERA movement is going to have considerable effects on the 70s and the 80s, and this transition into what becomes known as the conservative coalition for the Republican Party. So they play a pretty important role here, not only in working against the Equal Rights Amendment, but also working for conservative values. So what did they feel was going to happen if the ERA actually passed? That there was going to be a complete unraveling of traditional American society. And they were opposed to what was becoming known as feminism at this time. And feminism is defined as the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. And Schlafly will oftentimes say that women were created to do things differently than men. Their role was to be the housewife, to take care of the family, to make sure that those traditional values were in place. And who was going to do these things if the women left the home and went off to work? And she will gain quite a following with the Stop ERA movement. And here are some of the things that they were concerned with. They looked at the fact that women had certain rights within society or protections. For example, sexual assault laws favored women, to protect their if they were to be sexually assaulted. Women were granted alimony if the women or if the marriage dissolved and there was a divorce. Oftentimes in the 1970s, what we see is that if there was a divorce, women were generally granted custody of children because they were the mothers, the caretakers. They were also very concerned with the idea that, and remember, this is the 1972, 73 when this begins here. They're concerned with women being drafted. America has just come out of the Vietnam War, and or is in the closing throes of the Vietnam War, and so the draft is everyone's concern. And so Schlafly and the Stop ERA make quite a big deal out of the fact that if you pass the Equal Rights Amendment, then women are going to be treated just like men. They could be drafted. They are going to be expected to fight in combat, and that is not the role of women within society, they would argue. So how did the supporters of the ERA ultimately feel that the Stop ERA damaged the feminist movement? Although, like I said before, the feminist movement was successful in gaining quite a bit of ground for women during this era. The big thing was that here, this was not a male versus female position as it often had been in the past as women struggled for, say, voting rights or other opportunities. But this turned into an issue of women against women. Women who supported this idea of equality with men within society on all levels, and also they were very fearful that the ERA movement would destroy the idea of what the purpose of men and women were. And ultimately, as we see here, this was a split amongst women. So in the ERA, you had women. In the Stop ERA, you had just as many women. And they will fight vigorously at the state level to prevent the ERA from getting passed. And so the Equal Rights Amendment dies in 1982, almost closely being ratified. It's oftentimes brought up and discussed in Congress, so it's something that maybe in the future it would come around again. But this is an important part of the civil rights era and part of the women's movement. Thank you for listening.